The grand chamber of Kepler Prime Station stretched before Commander Jake Morrison like a cathedral of glass and metal. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of worlds filled the tiered seats, their forms ranging from humanoid to utterly alien. Some breathed oxygen like humans, others existed in specialized atmosphere bubbles. The air hummed with dozens of translation devices working simultaneously, creating a background noise that Jake had grown accustomed to over the past 15 years. He stood at the center of the speaking platform with Lisa Grant and Carl Hayes flanking him. Lisa kept her eyes on her datapad, monitoring incoming reports from Earth. Carl stood with his arms crossed, his engineer's mind probably calculating structural stress points in the station's architecture out of habit. They were here for the vote. After 15 years of proving themselves, humanity would finally become a full member of the Galactic Council. Jake allowed himself a small smile. 15 years of diplomacy, of trade agreements, of fighting alongside Council forces against pirates in the Outer Rim. 15 years of humanity showing they belonged among the stars. Today would make it official. Ambassador Velkoth of the Zentari Empire rose from his seat. The Zentari resembled upright lizards, scaled and cold-blooded, with eyes that could track movement faster than most species could blink. Velkoth's scales were deep purple, marking him as nobility among his people. He moved to the central podium with deliberate grace. Honored members of the council, Velkoth began, his voice translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We gather today to vote on humanity's petition for full membership. However, grave matters have come to light that we must address first. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Something was wrong. Lisa looked up from her datapad, her expression confused. This wasn't how the ceremony was supposed to proceed. Velkoth gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. Security footage played showing human facilities. Workers in Earth Defense Force uniforms moved weapons that Jake didn't recognize. The timestamp indicated these recordings were from 3 months ago. Our intelligence agencies have uncovered disturbing evidence, Velkoth continued. The humans have been developing prohibited weapons in violation of Council law. Genetic warfare, planet-killing devices, technologies banned by the Galactic Convention for 3,000 years. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Jake stepped forward, his voice carrying across the hall. These recordings are false. We have no such facilities. We've followed every council regulation to the letter. But Velkoth wasn't finished. More evidence appeared. Intercepted transmissions between Earth and its colonies, discussing weapons development, financial records showing massive budget allocations to secret military projects, testimony from alleged witnesses, other species claiming they'd seen these facilities firsthand. Jake's mind raced. The evidence looked real, too real. The encryption signatures on the transmissions matched Earth's current codes. The financial records aligned with actual Earth banking systems. Someone had done their homework, had spent enormous resources creating this fabrication. Lisa was frantically searching her datapad, trying to cross-reference the information with Earth's actual records. Carl had gone pale, his jaw clenched tight. Ambassador Threnal of the Mishvar Unity, a species that had always been friendly toward humanity, rose to speak. Surely we should allow the humans time to respond to these accusations. An investigation before judgment? The evidence is clear, replied Korathos of the Korath Dominion. The Korath were massive bear-like creatures with thick fur and razor-sharp claws. The humans have betrayed our trust. They've spent 15 years pretending to be peaceful while building weapons that could threaten us all. Vaxmore of the Vaxis Trade Union added his voice. The Vaxis were insectoid, their chittering speech translated into something resembling words. We cannot ignore such blatant violations. The humans must be expelled immediately. Jake tried to speak again, to demand time to investigate, but his voice was drowned out by the growing chaos in the chamber. Delegate after delegate rose to condemn humanity. Some seemed genuinely shocked and betrayed. Others appeared almost gleeful at the opportunity to turn against the newcomers. The vote came swiftly. One by one, species that had traded with Earth, that had fought beside human soldiers, that had welcomed human diplomats, voted for expulsion. The tally was unanimous. Not a single voice spoke in humanity's defense when the final count was called. The chief magistrate, an ancient being from a species so old they'd helped found the council itself, delivered the sentence. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be evacuated within 6 months. All trade agreements are terminated immediately. A peacekeeping fleet will monitor human space to ensure compliance and prevent further illegal weapons development. Jake felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. 15 years, generations of work, billions of credits invested in building relationships, all destroyed in minutes. As they were escorted from the chamber, Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. "The timestamps are wrong," she whispered urgently. "I ran the numbers. Those recordings supposedly show events from 3 months ago. But the encryption codes they're using weren't implemented until 2 weeks ago. Someone faked this, Jake. Someone went to enormous trouble to fake all of it. They boarded the human vessel Liberty in silence. The ship had been a gift from the Mishvar 3 years ago, a symbol of friendship. Now it felt like a coffin carrying them away from everything they'd worked for. As Earth Command connected via quantum relay, Jake had to deliver the news to President Helen Carter. Her face appeared on the view screen, hopeful and excited. She thought he was calling to announce their victory. "Madam President," Jake said, his voice heavy, "we've been expelled. They claim we've been building illegal weapons. The evidence is fabricated, but the vote was unanimous." The hope drained from Carter's face, replaced by shock, then anger, then something harder. "Get back to Earth immediately. We need to figure out what just happened and why." The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Lisa spent every waking hour analyzing the evidence, tracing financial records, checking timestamps and encryption signatures. Carl worked with Earth's best engineers to verify that the facilities shown in the recordings didn't exist. Jake sat in his quarters, replaying the vote in his mind, trying to understand how it had all gone so wrong so fast. On the second day, Lisa burst into the command deck, exhaustion evident on her face but excitement in her eyes. "I've got something. The evidence came from 3 sources. All the security footage traces back to Zentari intelligence. The financial records were provided by the Vaxis. The witness testimony came through Korath channels. The 3 loudest voices calling for our expulsion," Carl noted. "Exactly. And I found something else. Buried in commercial traffic records, there were coded transmissions between all 3 empires dating back 2 years. Someone scrubbed them from the official databases, but they're still in the commercial relay buffers. The subject headers reference a human problem and discuss solutions." Jake leaned forward. "They planned this. For years they planned to get rid of us. But why?" Carl asked. "What threat are we to them?" Before anyone could answer, the communications officer called out. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only, heavily encrypted, no source identification." "Put it through," Jake ordered. Static filled the bridge, then a voice, distorted and scrambled to prevent identification. "Commander Morrison, you don't know me, but I know what was done to your species today. They wanted you gone. You were becoming too powerful. Your technology advances faster than any species in Council history. Your industrial capacity rivals empires that have existed for millennia. In another century, you would have surpassed them all. The vote was decided months ago. The evidence was prepared a year ago. They were just waiting for the right moment." "Who are you?" Jake demanded. "Someone who believes this was wrong. Someone who's seen them do this before to other species. They fear change, fear competition. So they eliminate it before it becomes a true threat. Trust no one in the Council. Prepare for war. The peacekeeping fleet they're sending isn't coming to monitor you. It's coming to ensure you can never rise again." The transmission cut off. The bridge fell silent. Jake looked at his crew, at Lisa still clutching her datapad full of evidence, at Carl who had already been thinking about defense scenarios without being asked. He thought about Earth, about the colonies filled with families who'd built lives among the stars, about the generations who'd dreamed of humanity taking its place in a galactic community. They'd been betrayed. Systematically, deliberately betrayed by the very organization they'd spent 15 years trying to join. And now a fleet was coming to make sure humanity never got another chance. "Get me Admiral Blake," Jake said quietly, "and President Carter. Tell them we need to implement every contingency plan we've ever discussed and a few we haven't. Tell them the evidence of our innocence won't matter because this was never about evidence. It was about eliminating competition before it became a threat." Lisa nodded and moved to the communication station. Carl was already pulling up defense grids and fleet deployment scenarios on his terminal. President Helen Carter stood before the emergency assembly of Earth's leadership in the underground command center beneath Geneva. The room had been built during the early days of space exploration, designed to survive anything short of a planet-killing weapon. Now it served as the nerve center for humanity's response to the greatest crisis in its history. Holographic displays covered the walls, showing fleet positions, colony status reports, and the economic impact of the Council's sanctions already hitting Earth's markets. Admiral Kevin Blake stood to her right, his decorated uniform a testament to 40 years of military service. To her left, Director Susan Wells of Earth Intelligence Agency reviewed data streams on her personal display. "Let's be clear about our situation," Carter began, her voice steady despite the exhaustion on her face. "We've been expelled from the Galactic Council based on fabricated evidence. 3 empires conspired to frame us. A so-called peacekeeping fleet is being assembled that, according to our intelligence, may actually be coming to cripple our space capabilities permanently. We have 6 months to evacuate colonies that have millions of people. Does anyone have good news?" Admiral Blake stepped forward. "Our fleets are combat ready. If they come at us with force, we can hurt them badly. But prolonged war against 3 galactic empires? We'd lose eventually. We need time, and we need allies. Which is why we need to find proof of the conspiracy," Susan Wells added. "Commander Morrison's team found evidence of coordination between the 3 empires, but it's not enough. We need something undeniable, something that will turn the rest of the Council against them." Carter nodded. "Then we pursue both tracks. Admiral, begin military preparations, but keep it quiet. Recall our fleets, fortify the colonies, activate every defense grid we've got. Susan, I want your best people finding proof of this conspiracy, and I want diplomatic channels open to anyone who'll listen. Some Council species might be willing to help if they knew the truth." Over the next weeks, Jake Morrison and Lisa Grant traveled across neutral space, visiting species who weren't part of the Council's core power structure. The Talon Confederacy, a loose alliance of independent systems, received them politely but offered nothing concrete. The same happened with the Ashmar Collective, a group of peaceful species who'd chosen to remain outside Council politics. It was an elderly Ashmar historian named Relmick who finally gave them something useful. He invited them to his archive, a vast library of galactic history stored in data crystals that predated humanity's first radio transmissions. "Your species is not the first to face such accusations," Relmick explained, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he retrieved ancient records. 300 years ago, the Veltan Protectorate was expelled under similar circumstances. They were accused of developing illegal weapons. The evidence was later proven false, but by then, the Veltan had been forced back to their home system. Their economy collapsed, their culture fragmented, they never recovered. "What happened to the species who accused them?" Lisa asked. "The Zentari primarily, with support from the Korath and Vaxis, the same 3 who orchestrated your expulsion." Relmick displayed more records. 5 other species over the centuries have faced similar fates, always when they showed rapid advancement, always when they threatened to shift the balance of power. The pattern is clear to anyone who looks, but most choose not to see. Jake felt cold fury building in his chest. "Why don't other species speak up?" "Fear," Relmick said simply. "The 3 empires control the Council through a combination of economic power, military might, and political manipulation. To oppose them is to risk becoming their next target. I tell you this because I am old and have little left to lose, but I cannot offer more than knowledge." Back on Earth, Lisa's investigation team made progress. Aaron Park, a brilliant young hacker who'd cut his teeth breaking corporate encryption for fun, had traced the fabricated evidence through layers of false accounts and shell corporations. The trail led directly to a military installation in Zentari space. "It's not just a base," Aaron explained, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. "It's a black site. Official records say it's a research facility, but the power consumption and communication traffic suggest something else. Whatever they're hiding there, it's big." Admiral Blake studied the facility's specifications. "It's heavily defended. A frontal assault would require half our fleet and guarantee a war we're not ready for." "Then we don't go in the front," suggested Captain Ryan Foster, a Marine officer with extensive special operations experience. "We go in quiet, extract the data we need, and get out before they know we were there." Carter approved the mission despite the risks. Ryan assembled a team of 12, including intelligence operative Claire Mitchell, whose fluency in alien languages and cultures had made her invaluable during humanity's diplomatic years. They took a civilian transport vessel with falsified registration, posing as traders delivering supplies to a nearby Zentari colony. The infiltration took 3 weeks of careful preparation. Claire had obtained security codes from a corrupt Zentari official who gambled more than he earned. The team studied the facility's patterns, noting shift changes and supply deliveries. When they finally moved, it was during a radiation storm that interfered with sensors. They slipped through the facility's security using a combination of stolen access codes and carefully placed electromagnetic pulse charges that disabled cameras without triggering alarms. The facility was larger than expected, with multiple underground levels carved into an asteroid. In the deepest level, they found what they were looking for: a secure data vault containing communications between the highest levels of Zentari, Korath, and Vax's leadership. The files went back 5 years, detailing the entire conspiracy. Claire downloaded everything while Ryan's team set up defensive positions. The communications were damning. They discussed humanity's rapid advancement, their growing economic influence, their innovative technologies. The conclusion was unanimous among the 3 empires: humanity would surpass them within a century. They couldn't allow it. One message from Emperor Zelkan of the Zentari was particularly chilling. The humans are adaptable and creative in ways we are not. They solve problems we consider impossible. In war, this makes them dangerous. In peace, it makes them inevitable victors. We must act before they realize their own potential. We've got everything, Claire reported. Multiple backup copies encrypted and ready for transmission. That's when the alarm started. A Zentari patrol had noticed the disabled cameras. Security forces were converging on their position. Ryan made the call instantly. Claire, transmit everything now. Everyone else fall back to the ship. They fought their way through corridors filled with Zentari soldiers. Ryan's team was outnumbered but better trained. They used the facility's tight corridors to their advantage, holding choke points while Claire completed the transmission. Data sent, she confirmed. Earth has everything. They reached their ship under heavy fire. Ryan counted heads as everyone boarded. 12 went in. 11 were coming out. Claire didn't make it. A Zentari energy weapon had caught her in the back as she covered their retreat. Ryan locked eyes with his pilot. Get us out of here. But Zentari hunter ships were already launching. Fast, deadly vessels designed to chase down pirates and smugglers. The human ship was faster than most transports, but not fast enough. They're going to catch us, the pilot reported grimly. Ryan looked at the datapad showing confirmation of successful transmission to Earth. The evidence was home. The mission was complete. His crew had done what they came to do. Set course for the nearest asteroid field, Ryan ordered. Full speed. Make them work for it. On Earth, Admiral Blake received the transmitted data and immediately understood its significance. He also understood what Ryan's silence after the transmission meant. The team wasn't coming home. Lisa Grant analyzed the files with tears streaming down her face. Claire had been her friend since their academy days, but the data was everything they needed. Communications between emperors and dominarchs, detailed plans spanning years, discussions of other species they'd eliminated or planned to eliminate in the future. Jake Morrison prepared to take this evidence back to the council, knowing it might not be enough. The 3 conspirator empires controlled too much of the council's infrastructure, too much of its economy. They could deny, deflect, or simply refuse to acknowledge the truth. President Carter made a different decision. She called Admiral Blake and Dr. Marcus Lane, Earth's chief scientist, to a private meeting in her office. The evidence proves our innocence, Carter said, but it won't save us. They'll find ways to dismiss it or bury it. We need something more, something that changes the equation entirely. Dr. Lane nodded slowly. You're talking about Nightfall. What's Nightfall? Jake asked. Blake and Lane exchanged glances. Lane spoke first. During the 15 years we spent trying to join the council, we weren't just playing by their rules. We were also preparing for the possibility that they'd never accept us. Project Nightfall is our insurance policy. He pulled up classified schematics that made Jake's eyes go wide. Ships unlike anything humanity had fielded before. Weapons based on... The Galactic Council chamber looked exactly as it had 3 months earlier when humanity had been expelled. Thousands of delegates filled the tiered seats, representing hundreds of worlds. But this time, the atmosphere was different. tense, uncertain. Word had spread that humanity was returning with new evidence, and speculation ran wild about what the disgraced species might say. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the speaking platform once again, but he wasn't alone. President Helen Carter stood beside him, along with Admiral Kevin Blake in full military dress uniform. Behind them, holographic displays waited to spring to life. In orbit around Kepler Prime, invisible to every sensor the station possessed, 500 human warships held position. Ambassador Velkoth of the Zentari Empire watched from his seat with barely concealed contempt. The other conspirators, Korthos of the Korath and Vaxmore of the Vaxis, looked equally dismissive. They expected another plea for mercy, another desperate attempt to restore humanity's shattered reputation. They were about to be very surprised. The chief magistrate called the emergency session to order. The humans have requested this assembly to present new evidence regarding their expulsion. We grant them this courtesy, though the matter was settled by unanimous vote. You may proceed. Carter stepped forward, her voice carrying through the translation systems to every delegate in the chamber. 3 months ago, my species was expelled based on evidence that we had developed illegal weapons. That evidence was fabricated. We were framed in a deliberate conspiracy to eliminate humanity as a potential rival. Today we will prove it. More importantly, we will demonstrate why that conspiracy was the worst mistake the perpetrators could have made. She gestured, and the holographic displays came alive. The stolen files from the Zentari facility played for all to see. Communications between Emperor Zelkon, Supreme Coordinator Vaxmore, and High Dominarch Korthos. Plans spanning 5 years. Discussions of eliminating humanity before they became too powerful. References to other species they'd destroyed using similar methods. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Delegates turned to stare at the 3 conspirators. Ambassador Threnol of the Mishvar Unity rose immediately. This evidence must be investigated. If true, it represents the gravest violation of council law in centuries. Velkoth stood, his scales flushing dark with anger. These files are obviously fabricated, just as the humans claim our evidence against them was fabricated. They're desperate, willing to say anything to restore their reputation. We expected that response, Jake said calmly, which is why we brought independent verification. Dr. Marcus Lane, would you please explain? Dr. Lane appeared via holographic projection from Earth. The communications we've presented include encryption signatures unique to each empire's highest security protocols. These signatures cannot be faked without access to the encryption keys, which are changed daily and known only to the highest-ranking officials. We've had independent cryptographers from neutral species verify the signatures. They're genuine. These files are real. More chaos in the chamber. Several delegates demanded immediate investigation. Others called for the accused empires to respond. The unified front that had expelled humanity so easily 3 months ago was fracturing before everyone's eyes. Korthos of the Korath stood, his massive form dominating his section of the chamber. Even if these files are real, they prove nothing criminal. Strategic planning is not a crime. Discussing potential threats is not a crime. We have every right to protect our interests. You have the right to defend yourselves, Carter agreed. You don't have the right to frame innocent species for crimes they didn't commit. You don't have the right to eliminate rivals through lies and manipulation. That's what you've done to humanity. That's what you've done to at least 6 other species over the past 3 centuries. She displayed records from Relmix archives, showing the pattern of accusations and expulsions going back hundreds of years. Every time, the same 3 empires were involved. Every time a promising young species was destroyed before it could challenge the established order. You're not just criminals, Carter continued, her voice hard. You're serial criminals. And today, that ends. We are giving you 72 hours to confess your crimes publicly, submit your military leadership to war crimes tribunals, and pay reparations not just to humanity but to every species you've victimized. If you refuse, there will be consequences. Vaxmore's chittering laugh echoed through his translator. Consequences? You threaten us? You're one species, barely a century into spaceflight, expelled and sanctioned. We are 3 of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. What consequences could you possibly deliver? Admiral Blake smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. I was hoping you'd ask. Computer, deactivate stealth systems. Show them. Every screen in the chamber switched to external views of the space around Kepler Prime Station. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, like ghosts materializing from nowhere, human warships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds. 500 advanced vessels, each one larger and more sophisticated than anything humanity had fielded before, surrounded the station in a perfect sphere. The chamber fell absolutely silent. This is the consequence, Blake said quietly. This is what you created when you betrayed us. While we were playing by your rules, being diplomatic and patient, we were also preparing for the possibility that you'd never let us succeed peacefully. Project Nightfall. 500 warships equipped with technology you've never seen. Technology that makes your fleets obsolete. Jake pulled up technical specifications that made several delegates gasp. Dark matter manipulation. We discovered it 15 years ago, but kept it secret. These ships can generate shields that your weapons can't penetrate. They can move through space faster than your fastest scouts. They can fire weapons that disrupt matter at the quantum level. Each one of these vessels could engage 10 of your finest warships and win. You're bluffing, Velkoth said, but his voice lacked confidence. Are we? Carter asked. Your sensors can analyze our ships right now. Your scientists can verify what we're telling you. Or, if you prefer, we can provide a demonstration. We're prepared to do so, though I'd rather not destroy valuable military assets unnecessarily. Several delegates were frantically checking sensor readings. Others were communicating with their home governments. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted dramatically, and everyone knew it. Ambassador Threnal spoke carefully. President Carter, what exactly are you proposing? Justice, Carter replied. The three conspirator empires confess their crimes and face accountability. In return, humanity shares dark matter technology with every other council species, except the conspirators. We help you all advance together, creating a true balance of power instead of an oligarchy that eliminates anyone who threatens their control. And if we refuse? Korthus demanded. Then you face the consequences alone, Blake said. You'll watch, as every other species in the galaxy gains access to technology that makes them your equals or superiors, while you remain frozen at your current level. Within a generation, you'll be the weakest empires in the council instead of the strongest. Your choice. Velkoth's scales turned almost black with rage. This is blackmail. This is terrorism. You cannot threaten the council this way. You framed us for terrorism, Jake shot back. You spent 5 years planning to eliminate my species. You've destroyed 6 others over the centuries. Don't talk to us about threats when your entire power structure is built on eliminating competition before it becomes inconvenient. The chief magistrate tried to restore order as the chamber descended into shouting and accusations. Some species declared support for humanity immediately. Others demanded more time to verify the evidence. Still others looked to the 3 accused empires, waiting to see how they'd respond. That's when Velkoth made his fatal mistake. You want a demonstration of power? He snarled. We'll show you power. The Zentari Empire doesn't bend to upstart species making threats. He sent a command through his console. Minutes later, Zentari warships stationed at Kepler Prime moved into attack formation, advancing on the human fleet. 60 vessels, each one a proven combat ship with centuries of design evolution behind it. Blake looked at Carter, who nodded grimly. Disable them. No casualties if possible. The human ships moved with speed that shocked everyone watching. One moment they were in defensive positions. The next they'd surrounded the Zentari vessels. Dark matter weapons fired, not the destructive beams the galaxy was used to, but something different. Pulses of energy that passed through conventional shields as if they weren't there. Zentari ships went dark. Engines offline. Weapons offline. Life support still functioning, but every combat system disabled. In 90 seconds, 60 Zentari warships became floating debris, their crews alive but helpless. The human ships returned to their positions as if nothing had happened. The chamber was silent again, but this time the silence was absolute. Every delegate stared at the screens showing the disabled Zentari fleet. The most advanced military vessels the Zentari possessed, neutralized without taking a single casualty, defeated so completely they never fired a shot. 72 hours, Carter repeated into the silence. Confess, Face. The 72 hours expired without a response from the three conspirator empires. No confession, no offer to negotiate. Just silence, and then mobilization. Within hours of the deadline passing, Zentari, Korath, and Vaxus fleets began moving toward human space. Thousands of warships, the accumulated military might of three ancient empires, all converging on humanity's colonies and Earth itself. President Helen Carter watched the tactical displays in Earth's command center as enemy fleets appeared on long-range sensors. She'd hoped the conspirators would choose peace, but she'd prepared for war. Now that war had arrived, she felt surprisingly calm. There was no more uncertainty, no more waiting, just the grim business of survival. Admiral Kevin Blake stood beside her, coordinating humanity's response. They're hitting us everywhere at once. New Horizon Colony, Mars Station 7, the Europa shipyards. Classic overwhelming force doctrine. They expect to sweep through our defenses before we can organize effective resistance. Then let's show them how wrong they are, Carter said quietly. All colonies are weapons-free. Defend with everything we've got. The Battle of New Horizon began at dawn, colony local time. Commander Victoria Hayes watched from the bridge of her flagship as 300 Korath warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The Korath were known for brutal, straightforward tactics, relying on their superior numbers and heavy armor to overwhelm opposition. Victoria commanded 30 human ships, 10-to-1 odds, terrible numbers by any conventional calculation. But her ships weren't conventional. All vessels, activate dark matter shields and scatter formation, she ordered. Make them chase us. The human fleet dispersed, each ship moving independently at speeds that made the Korath sensors struggle to track them. The Korath admiral, confident in his numerical advantage, ordered a pursuit. His vessels spread out, trying to corner and destroy the fleeing humans. That's when Victoria sprang her trap. All ships, reverse and engage. Target their command vessels first. The human ships turned on a credit, their dark matter drives allowing impossible maneuvers. They tore through the scattered Korath formation like wolves among sheep. Dark matter weapons punched through Korath shields as if they didn't exist. Heavy armor that could withstand conventional weapons for hours melted under quantum disruption beams. Victoria's tactical display showed Korath ships going dark one after another. The enemy admiral tried to reform his fleet, to bring his superior numbers to bear, but the human ships were too fast, too maneuverable. They struck from unexpected angles, disabled targets, and vanished before the Korath could respond effectively. 3 hours into the battle, the Korath admiral did something unprecedented. He ordered a retreat. Of his 300 ships, only 140 remained combat-capable. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. A few had taken damage, but nothing critical. The victory was broadcast across the galaxy's communication networks. The Korath Dominion, feared for its military might across a dozen sectors, had been defeated by a human force a tenth its size. Other species watched in amazement and growing hope. Maybe humanity really could change the balance of power. But Earth faced its own crisis. The Zentari, stung by their humiliation at Kepler Prime, sent their largest fleet directly toward humanity's homeworld. 700 vessels, including their most advanced dreadnoughts. Emperor Zelkon himself commanded the assault, determined to crush humanity's resistance permanently. The Zentari fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system expecting to find Earth defended by whatever forces humanity could spare from protecting its colonies. They found something very different. Admiral Blake had spent the 3 days of the Ultimatum fortifying Earth's defenses. The orbital defense grid, officially described as a network of communication and sensor satellites, revealed its true purpose. Each satellite was actually a dark matter generator, and together they created an energy barrier surrounding the entire planet. The Zentari fleet opened fire with enough destructive power to crack a moon. Energy beams, kinetic missiles, plasma torpedoes, everything in their arsenal. The barrier absorbed it all without even flickering. That's impossible. Emperor Zelkon stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. His science officer checked and rechecked the readings. The barrier is converting our weapon's energy into its own power source. We're literally making it stronger by attacking it. Before Zelkon could process this information, Earth's moon lit up. Massive doors opened across its surface, revealing shipyards hidden beneath the lunar surface. Hundreds of human warships emerged from underground facilities that had been built in secret over 15 years. Admiral Blake's voice came over the communication channel, broadcast to every Zentari ship. Emperor Zelkon, you came here expecting to find us helpless. You forgot that Earth isn't just another colony. This is our home, the place where we evolved, where we learned to survive against impossible odds. You really thought we wouldn't defend it with everything we have? The human fleet launched from the moon, hitting the Zentari formation from behind while the planetary shields kept them pinned in place. It was a slaughter. Zentari ships, unable to retreat through the barrier and unable to withstand the human assault from behind, were systematically disabled or destroyed. Emperor Zelkon watched his fleet die around him. 700 ships reduced to wreckage in 6 hours. His own dreadnought, the pride of the Zentari Navy, was crippled when a dark matter torpedo punched through its reactor shielding. When the human fleet offered him the chance to surrender, he took it. The alternative was death, and Zelkon was many things but not suicidal. His remaining ships powered down weapons and submitted to boarding parties. The Battle of Earth was over. Humanity had defended its homeworld against the largest single fleet ever assembled against it. The cost to the Zentari was catastrophic. Of 700 ships, less than 200 survived, and most of those were so damaged they'd never see combat again. But the war was far from over. The Vaxis trade union took a different approach. Rather than direct military confrontation, they attacked human supply lines and trade routes. Their ships, designed for commerce and fast travel, proved excellent at hit-and-run tactics. Human colonies began experiencing shortages as supply convoys were intercepted and destroyed. Captain Ryan Foster, posthumously promoted after his sacrifice at the Zentari facility, had trained dozens of special operations teams before his death. Now those teams went into action. They infiltrated Vaxis space stations, sabotaged shipyards, and disrupted command and control networks. Lieutenant Aaron Park, the hacker who traced the original conspiracy, led cyber warfare operations that crippled Vaxis commercial networks. Financial systems crashed, supply databases were corrupted, communication relays went offline. Vaxis, who'd built their empire on trade and information, found themselves blind and broke. But the human special operations teams paid a price. Small unit actions were dangerous even with superior technology. Teams were lost. Good people died in silence on distant stations, their sacrifices known only to their commanders and the intelligence officers who compiled after-action reports. Lisa Grant coordinated the information warfare campaign from Earth, making sure every battle, every victory, every act of Zentari or Korath or Vaxis aggression was documented and shared across the galaxy. Public opinion began shifting dramatically. Species that had been neutral started questioning why they should support empires that had lied about humanity and were now losing a war they'd started. The war's turning point came when Ambassador Threnal of the Mishvar Unity did something unprecedented. He formed a coalition of 37 council species willing to actively support humanity. It wasn't a formal military alliance at first, just an agreement to share intelligence and provide humanitarian aid to human colonies under attack. But when a Korath fleet attacked a Mishvar convoy carrying medical supplies to a human colony, everything changed. The Mishvar government declared war on the Korath Dominion. Within days, other coalition species followed. The war transformed from humanity versus 3 empires into a galactic civil war. Suddenly, the conspirators faced enemies on multiple fronts. The Mishvar fleet, equipped with human dark matter technology, engaged Korath forces across a dozen systems. Other coalition species attacked Vaxis trade routes and Zentari supply bases. The three empires that had dominated the galaxy for centuries found themselves fighting for survival. President Carter addressed the coalition via quantum relay from Earth. "We didn't want this war. We wanted justice through peaceful means. But since the conspirators chose violence, we'll end this the only way they've left us: total victory. We fight until they surrender unconditionally, or until they're no longer capable of threatening anyone." The coalition forces, now numbering over 3,000 ships with more joining daily, began a coordinated offensive. No longer did humanity fight alone. Mishvar vessels fought alongside human destroyers. Ships from a dozen species coordinated strikes against enemy positions. The galaxy had never seen cooperation on this scale. The conspirators, desperate and facing defeat, made one final gamble. They pooled their remaining fleets, every ship they could muster, into a. The space around Earth became a storm of energy and metal. 4,000 enemy ships hurled themselves at the coalition fleet, with the desperation of those who knew they were fighting their last battle. The coalition forces, outnumbered but equipped with superior technology, met them head-on. Admiral Kevin Blake watched his tactical display as the fleets collided. Ships from dozens of species fought together, covering each other's weaknesses and exploiting the enemy's disorganization. The conspirators had thrown their ships together without proper coordination, and it showed. Centauri vessels blocked Korath firing solutions. Vaxis ships fled from engagements, leaving their allies exposed. Commander Victoria Hayes led the human contingent with precision. Her ships moved through the battle like dancers, their dark matter drives allowing maneuvers that confused and demoralized the enemy. When a group of Korath battleships tried to break through toward Earth, Victoria's squadron intercepted them, disabling 3 vessels in as many minutes. But the sheer number of enemy ships began to tell. Coalition vessels took damage, some were destroyed. Admiral Threnall's flagship took a direct hit from a Centauri dreadnought, killing half the crew. The admiral himself survived but was badly injured. "They're pushing hard on the left flank," Victoria reported. "If it collapses, they'll have a clear run at Earth." Blake made a decision. "Pull back the center. Draw them in deeper. Let them think they're winning." The coalition fleet retreated, not in panic but in controlled withdrawal. The enemy commanders, sensing victory, pressed their advantage. They pushed deeper into the Sol system, leaving their flanks exposed as they focused on breaking through to Earth. That's when the trap closed. Human ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt activated their engines. Additional coalition vessels emerged from behind Jupiter's moons. The enemy fleet suddenly found itself surrounded, its numerical advantage meaningless when attacked from all sides. The battle turned into a massacre. Enemy ships pressed together and unable to maneuver became easy targets. The dark matter weapons the coalition now wielded proved devastatingly effective. Centauri shields collapsed, Korath armor melted. Vaxis ships, designed for speed rather than combat, were torn apart. Emperor Zelkon, commanding from his crippled flagship, watched his fleet die. Thousands of ships reduced to hundreds, then to dozens. His communications officer reported that the Korath admiral was dead, his command ship destroyed. The Vaxis Supreme Coordinator had already fled, abandoning what remained of his forces. "It's over," his tactical officer said quietly. "We've lost." Zelkon looked at the display showing Earth, still protected by its impenetrable shield, still untouched despite everything they'd thrown at it. He'd started this conspiracy 5 years ago, convinced that humanity needed to be eliminated before they became too powerful. Now, because of his actions, humanity had become the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Open a channel to Admiral Blake," Zelkon said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Unconditional surrender. It's over." The transmission went out on all frequencies. Within minutes, the Korath and Vaxis commanders followed suit. The last great fleet of the 3 conspirator empires powered down weapons and submitted to coalition authority. Admiral Blake accepted their surrender with no celebration, no triumph. Just grim satisfaction that the killing was finally over. "All ships cease fire. Search and rescue operations begin immediately. We recover survivors from both sides, secure the surrendered vessels, and take the command crews into custody." President Helen Carter stood in Earth's command center, watching the battle end. Around her, officers and advisors cheered, embracing each other in relief and joy. But Carter felt only exhaustion. The war was won, but at tremendous cost. 30,000 human soldiers and sailors were dead. 12 colonies had been damaged. 3 of them severely, and across the galaxy, hundreds of thousands from other species had died in a war that never needed to happen. The trials began 6 months later on neutral ground, a space station provided by the Ashmar Collective. Jake Morrison served as chief prosecutor, presenting evidence not just of the conspiracy against humanity, but of centuries of manipulation and elimination of rival species. The galaxy watched as the powerful were finally held accountable. Emperor Zelkan of the Zentari sat in the defendant's chair, his scales dull and lifeless. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Communications planning humanity's elimination, orders to fabricate evidence, discussions of previous species they'd destroyed using the same methods. The tribunal heard testimony from survivors of those extinct civilizations, their stories of betrayal and loss echoing humanity's own experience. "You destroyed my people 300 years ago," an elderly Veltan testified. "The same lies, the same accusations, the same systematic elimination. We never recovered. Our civilization collapsed. We became refugees scattered across the galaxy, and you felt no remorse because to you, we were just obstacles to be removed." Supreme Coordinator Vaxmore of the Vaxis and High Dominarch Korthus of the Korath faced similar testimony. Species after species came forward with evidence of manipulation, economic warfare, and political assassination conducted over centuries by the conspirator empires. The verdicts were unanimous. All 3 leaders were found guilty of conspiracy, fraud, war crimes, and crimes against civilization. They were sentenced to life imprisonment. Their empires were required to pay massive reparations to humanity and to the other species they'd victimized. Their military forces were to be reduced to defensive levels only, monitored by the new Galactic Authority. But punishment wasn't enough. The galaxy needed to change. The old Galactic Council, which had enabled the conspirators for so long, was dissolved. In its place, the United Galactic Assembly was formed, with humanity playing a leading role in drafting its charter. Lisa Grant, who'd spent months uncovering the conspiracy, became Earth's first ambassador to the reformed assembly. She stood before thousands of delegates on the day the new government officially began, speaking words that would be remembered for generations. "We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, not as victors and defeated, but as equals committed to building something better. The old system allowed the powerful to eliminate the weak. The new system will protect the vulnerable and hold everyone, regardless of power, accountable to the same laws. We learned the hard way that trust must be earned, that transparency prevents corruption, and that justice delayed is justice denied. Let us remember these lessons as we build our new future together." The Assembly voted to adopt the charter by overwhelming majority. The new government emphasized transparent communication, equal representation regardless of species age or military power, and strong protections for developing civilizations. Never again would a species be eliminated simply because they threatened the established order. True to their promise, humanity began sharing dark matter technology through the Galactic Technology Institute that Dr. Marcus Lane established. But the sharing came with conditions. Species had to demonstrate ethical standards and commitment to the Assembly's principles. The 3 conspirator empires would have to earn trust before gaining access. This ensured humanity maintained significant influence without creating resentment. Other species understood that the technology was earned, not given freely, and worked hard to meet the standards. Within 5 years, dozens of species had been certified and begun implementing dark matter systems in their ships and facilities. The war had also forged unexpected friendships. The Mishvar Unity became humanity's closest ally. Ambassador Threnall, who'd recovered from his injuries, and President Carter developed a genuine partnership based on shared values and mutual respect. Trade flourished between human and Mishvar space. Cultural exchanges brought Mishvar artists to Earth and human musicians to Mishvar Prime. Children of both species studied together in joint educational programs. Other coalition species followed suit. Trade agreements were signed. Research partnerships were formed. For the first time, the galaxy experienced true cooperation, rather than the tense competition the old system had fostered. But the cost wasn't forgotten. Earth built memorials to those who died in the war. The largest stood in Geneva, next to the command center where President Carter had coordinated humanity's defense. 30,000 names were carved into dark stone, each one representing a life given to defend humanity's future. Admiral Blake retired after the war. His burden finally lifted. He spent his remaining years teaching at the new Starfleet Academy, sharing his experiences with young officers who would inherit the responsibility of protecting Earth and its allies. He died peacefully 20 years after the war ended, surrounded by former crew members who'd served under him. President Carter chose not to seek re-election after her term ended. She'd led humanity through its darkest hour and into a new age of prosperity and cooperation. That was enough. She retired to a small home in Colorado, where she wrote her memoirs and received visitors from across the galaxy who wanted to meet the leader who'd stood up to empires and won. Commander Victoria Hayes, promoted to admiral, took command of the Guardian Initiative, a permanent military force dedicated to protecting developing civilizations from exploitation. Ships bearing the Guardian,